What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another weekly update. Now, last week has really kind of left us guessing as to where we are going. Yes, we have been running extremely high. I've been talking about this over the past couple weeks that we have really pushed up quite high, especially for tech. A lot of mid-tier and small cap stocks have really kind of taken a hit. Haven't had much action over the past couple of weeks. It's just been mainly all the FANG stocks. Now, being said, Friday, we've gotten one heck of a pullback on tech. But being said, let's look at the market in general first. Actually, before we get into that, we do have a big week in earnings. Just in market in general, we do have a lot of build permits, housing starts, existing home sales. We got a lot of SAR information data coming out this week. Aside from that, I think we have a Powell. I think Powell is facing the public on Tuesday. Not sure about the time on that, but we will get a little bit of Powell this week as well. But being said, things are looking pretty funny. Last week we had OPEC, so we had a lot of monthly options essentially being coming to an end on Friday. And so being said, that might have been for the sell-off, but one thing you can see is that there has been a break in the Qs. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. There has been a break on the daily. Look on the daily on the Qs. We did finally break out of this range. Not saying that we come full force down and come crashing down. I don't think we're going to crash. I know the Delta variant has also been circulating around as far as the news headline, as well as a lot of the inflation data that's been coming out. Again, inflation is primarily being seen in travel. And all travel-related entities, essentially. So being said, even with that being an issue, Powell had addressed that before, possibly even 2 months ago. He said that there was going to be inflation in the travel sector because people have been essentially tied up in their homes for months on end. And we're starting to see that as far as like your lumber and everything like that. It's slowly moving back up, but it is nowhere near what it was. Lumber, I believe, has crashed quite a bit. I think it's even more over 50% since we started really seeing inflation at that point. That was lasting for a couple of months. Now everything is starting to pull back. Now we're seeing kind of inflation because supply and demand. Everybody's been closed up. Now everybody wants to go on vacation. It was bound to happen, right? The supply and demand, people are going to try to get out and do something because they've been locked away for a year. So supply and demand is really there. But this week, we also have a lot of earnings. So that's something else to keep in mind. This is where we really start getting into big tech. Now, not this week, but next week, we have a lot of the bigger FANG stocks. You have Apple and Facebook next week. But this week, we do have Netflix. We have Netflix, Coca-Cola, IBM, Snap, Intel, Whirlpool, Texas Instruments, J&J, United, Chipotle. There is a lot of big plays that we have. Honeywell as well, American Express. I mean, this is where earnings really starts kicking up. But being said, I do see a lot of movement this week, but we also have to be mindful that not only is the bigger tech earnings next week, but we also got the Fed meeting next week. So that's something to keep in mind. And at these levels, we might have already run for big tech. We might have already had a run for earnings, and I'm starting to think that's what it is. I think we're starting to pull back. We saw this February and March last time we saw this, and then actual earnings hit, and we did drop quite a bit in March. Yeah, see, back in March, we started having a bit of a pullback at that point, and I think we're starting to see that again. in a SPY and all that tech, even again, second tier in small caps have really taken a massive hit. They are in value stocks, even itself. I was looking over value stocks like your BA. BA is really even taking a beating. Look on the hourly here. BA has been taking a beating. You look at Win. Some of these ones that they thought would bounce back and have big earnings, right? You got the Delta variant, so that's something to keep in mind. And then plus, everything is essentially skyrocketing for travel or any kind of resorts or anything like that. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these starting to come down because of inflation. Now you're not seeing your things like your Apples. Now Apple's had some crazy news about the supply for phones is absolutely ridiculous, that they're putting this massive order for phones. It wasn't actually directed from Apple. So we did get a spike, but it didn't continue because of the fact that it wasn't actually directly correlated, right? There was no confirmation that the demand for phones was needed. So we did pull back. Apple finally gave up some gains. Amazon finally gave up some gains, and Facebook is actually held, or not Facebook, but Tesla's held pretty well. It did chop back down a little bit, but it is holding very well. There's actually a huge wedge on the daily. Tesla, so it's hitting that trend line support. Again, there's a couple different trend lines Tesla does have, but it looks like we're breaking out. Looks like we're retesting something. I don't have much of a watch list. My watch list is mainly FANG, and it will be that way until stuff starts turning around, or I feel like there's other lower cap stocks that can start moving again. Is your Palantir, again, your Roblox actually looks good as well, but I think that second tier isn't going to do so hot. Especially with big tech starting to come down. We might get a little bit of a pop, but I think more than likely until big tech starts moving again, you're not going to see the mid cap or low or small caps really doing much, or value for that matter. We really want value to be pushing just as much as tech. We don't want to be caught in any kind of tech bubble per se. Something Kathy Wood has talked about, that we want both value and tech to run together in parallel. So being said, I think we're getting to that point. Again, tech has finally had its run. A lot of these have been breaking out. I know Amazon or Apple had been consolidating for the longest time before it had its breakout. Facebook has been struggling. Every time it tries to hit all-time highs, it pulls back. It has been playing this range well. It normally does this right before earnings. There's a couple stocks that do this. I know Square is another one that does do this. It will have a massive run, and then towards earnings, it'll just start banging around and essentially playing range until it does get earnings, and then from that point, it will skyrocket from there. Not saying that it will, but Facebook and one is one I really like because of the fact that it works off of ad revenue, right? So it doesn't have much holding it back aside from antitrust stuff, which is something that could happen. And I believe on the 27th, there should be some kind of closure to the whole antitrust thing, if they're going to extend it, or if they're going to try to actually do something with the antitrust thing. But if they do not, if it does get extended, I do see Facebook taking off from that point. Then you have ones like Shop, which has been holding extremely well. It showed a little bit of weakness, but it had a lot of upgrades on Friday. It has a $2,000 upgrade, which is something to keep in mind. It has been holding pretty well, the support at 1435. So it might be something I might start playing going forward, as long as it holds as 1435. The market in general, I think, needs to hold. Again, with OPEX last week and a lot of contracts ending, Monday we'll confirm that if that's what it is. If that's what it is, and we gap up on Sunday night into Monday, that's exactly what it was. Now, if we don't, do that and we start selling off, then there's something more there that's going on, maybe more inflation concerns or maybe anticipation of what the Fed is going to bring to the table next week. So just be mindful of that. It may not affect this week, but really understand that, Netflix in general is going to really set the pace, right? We might gap up and then stay flat on Monday, waiting for Netflix and seeing what Netflix does. If Netflix has great earnings and it crashes, which is something we saw in March, that is something to keep in mind, because if there's a trend of this, we're definitely going to correct at this point. Again, there's not a lot of volume in July, so that's also something to keep in mind. There's a lot of people on vacation, stuff like that, so there isn't a lot of volume in the market. But being said, again, my watch list is primarily FANGs, right? I'm watching them to see what they do. At this point, if FANGs really start pulling back on Monday, I'm going to start looking at stuff that is basing and not giving way or dropping a little bit and holding. That's my favorite pattern. That's what I'm going to be looking for. If you like mid-tier or small caps, look for that. Look for stuff that is basing. If we did decide to correct back a little bit more from this point, again, we've been running extremely hot. Again, even with earnings, I don't think earnings is really going to play much into the moves that have already been made. I think the market is waiting on the Fed, waiting on earnings to see where we go from this point. So being said, that's pretty much what I got for this week. Again, crazy week in the market. There's not a lot coming out aside from housing data this week. And again, you got big earnings this week, so that's something to keep in mind. I don't think there's anything other. There could be some one-off news that comes out with the Delta variant, so that's also something to watch. Just be mindful of, right? Maybe we start correcting more on that. But nonetheless, remember to hit the like button on the way out. And until next time, guys, I'll see you later.